Brand performance is getting more and more important, and in the general environment of the internet, also a bit more complex. Because online branding, with all those banners and pop-ups and Twitter feeds and layovers and pop-unders, seems to be very confusing, very challenging, and rather complex. But for me, it's always kind of reassuring to step back in time and see that offline branding was never that easy either. I love this ad. It's from 1892 actually, and it's an advertisement for beef extract from a newspaper that was called the Illustrated Sports and Dramatic News. So a quite elaborate title. And when you look at that ad, it's interesting to see that it has all the ingredients of a very fine consumer goods ad, but it had to explain all those features. For example, it says, Liebig, this signature in blue on each jar. So it needs to explain what a trademark is. It says here, just below the beef eaters, that yes, these are the beef eaters, and they are celebrating the arrival of a boat bringing Liebig's beef extract to town. And the one that I like most is, we all think that free giveaways for customers have been invented quite recently, but here in 1892 it says, cookery books, indispensable to ladies, not to cooks, but to ladies, sent free on application. So it has all the ingredients of an ad. It creates excitement with the beef eaters, it creates interaction with the cookery book, it creates distinction by explaining that the blue signature makes a difference on beef extract. So offline branding was already rather complex before the internet came along. So when we then remember what we all learned at university, and what marketing basically was all about, then we all remember that formula of AIDA: attention, interest, desire, action. And that's basically what branding is all about. That's basically what that Liebig beef extract advertisement was about. Attention, look at the beef eaters. Interest, they are bringing the best beef extract into town and all that stuff. And these days, we used to add a little bit. The R stands for recommendation, because we all know that word of mouth, that consumer interaction, be it online or offline, is getting more and more important. So remembering all those basics, all those nice to know elements that we kind of grew up with, makes online branding easier as well. Because online, keeping that model, that AIDA plus R model alive, is more and more challenging, because the web is still getting more and more crowded. Today there's more internet pages online than people on this planet, and they're also growing faster than the world's population. So it will be getting more and more challenging, but on the other hand, keeping that model in mind also makes it easier, because it helps us to kind of put things into perspective and put them into certain drawers. And putting things into drawers, that's a principle that we all know from retail, because retail is crowded as well. Retail is crowded on the high street, retail is crowded in the supermarket, retail is crowded in the shelf. And you all know that the big mantra of successful retail is location, location, location. That's what it's all about. You have to have the store in the right place, you have to have your package on the right piece of shelf, you have to have it in the eye level, and people, CPG companies, are prepared to pay for that privilege. Rent is higher in high street locations, and all that stuff. The location, location, location principle then transfers rather nicely online as well, because qualified traffic, to a certain extent, traffic is the most important ingredient of online branding. The web is crowded as the supermarket shelf is crowded. So the presence in the web is kind of the virtual shelf presence that you need to come up with. People used to browse around on high streets, so these days they browse around in the internet. And just to rattle off a few numbers, 62% of all people buying mobile phones in Germany research on the web. 82% of all people buying cars research on the web. 95% of all people buying digital cameras research on the web. And although only like in most instances, cars being an exception, less than half of those people really buy online, the consumer decision-making process is heavily influenced by stuff people find online. That's the famed research online, purchase offline effect that you all know. So it is of vital importance to drive traffic to your website. And in the modern web, there are probably 5 elements that drive search. The first of all, of course, is content. That's what we all know. Putting banner ads on the online editions of newspapers and all that stuff definitely can be an important driver of content. Search, our core business, is an important driver of content. Depending on the category, between 70 and 90% of all people start or include search in their research process when looking for information online. Social is getting more and more important. Facebook these days, despite all the critics that call upon the demise of Facebook, has more than 400 million registered users, rising at a dramatic rate. Google has included many social features in all its products, from YouTube to search. Twitter is also very much talked about. So social is an element. Video, I think you heard about YouTube yesterday, with its billions and billions of videos uploaded and watched and distributed in the community each day. And then there's mobile. And mobile is interesting to see, because when you look at, for example, mobile search, and take the last couple of quarters rise in mobile search traffic and contrast that with the rise of desktop search traffic at the very beginning of this century, then they have the same shape, the same speed of acceleration. So we expect that mobile will be very important in the future, and that's one of the reasons why Eric Schmidt kind of focused our strategy very much around mobile and called upon the engineers to come up with mobile-first solutions. So every solution that Google works on needs to be available on mobile first before it goes to the desktop in the future. And all those 5 elements need to come together nicely to drive traffic, valuable traffic, to your website, because consumers actually like to interact with brands. They buy stuff with branded names on them. They are proud to present their brand to their friends and family. And online is no difference. But you need to have that traffic element that drives them to spend time on their website. And while we're talking about spending on time on a website, I just heard a couple of weeks ago from one of our colleagues in Mountain View an interesting acronym. He said, measuring traffic only in hits isn't the right thing, because hits is an acronym for how idiots track success. That's probably a bit rude to put it, but he has a valid point, because if you have a lot of traffic on your website, but also have a high bounce rate, then that's not valuable traffic that you brought to that website. So really trying to understand how people interact with your brand, with the information you provide online, with all the social and search and mobile features that you probably have incorporated, is becoming more and more critical in accessing the performance of your brand online. And then putting all that back again into the simple AIDA model provides valuable insights to those buckets that I mentioned, because attention actually is a search on Google. You can measure that. You can put a number behind it. Interest might be expressed by following your brand or your offerings on Twitter, and again, you can put a number on this. Desire might be a click on like on Facebook, where again, you can put numbers behind it. Action might be a posted review on Blogger or any other blog service that you choose. And finally, a recommendation might be an upload of a fan video to YouTube. And again, that can be tracked, measured, and evaluate it. So online branding suddenly isn't that complex anymore. It's just a bit more challenging, but it can be broken down into nicely shaped buckets. At least that's what we think. But there are a couple of tough issues, and I'd like to point out 3 of them. The first one is sustainability, the second one is efficiency, and the third one is effectiveness. Let me start with sustainability. If we would have met 3 years ago, probably 2 years ago, we all would have been excited about Second Life, wouldn't we? Today, probably nobody's talking about Second Life anymore. But 3 years ago, that was kind of hot, as we're talking about Twitter and all that stuff today. So when you try to invest in online properties, you really you really have to think hard about how sustainable is that. And one of the reasons why Facebook is so successful is that it replicates behavior that we have offline into an online model. We think very strongly that only a model that supports natural offline behavior can be successful online. People like to compare stuff, that's why they go to Foursquare. People like to interact, people like to be informed, that's why they go to Twitter. People like to brag about their achievements, that's why they go to Facebook. So if it's not an online model and an offline model, then it's probably hard to replicate offline. And even the Germans only dress up in funny costumes once a year and not throughout the year. So Second Life, being probably a model of carnival to a certain extent, wasn't that sustainable. The second tough issue that you need to face with all those online models is efficiency. Is it really scalable? If you have a couple of hundred, even a couple of thousand followers on Twitter, how important is that really compared to all that other traffic that you need to be driving to your website? How important is that compared to all those other millions and millions of interactions that you need to have to scale your retail business? So it might be interesting to invest a little bit of time and effort into not so efficient, not so scalable efforts, but at the end of the day, you really need to bring it up to big numbers to make it a driver of your business. And finally, effectiveness. When you question sustainability and effectiveness in the right way, then the last challenge is how effective is all what I'm doing? Is it really changing the performance of my brand? Is it, for example, really driving time spent on my online asset for the customers that I really value? Is it really driving repeat purchase rates? And the big benefit of online versus offline is that you can put hard, measurable numbers behind effectiveness, and you don't have to guess. So that old mantra, I think Henry Ford was it Henry Ford who said that 50% of all advertising is wasted, you just don't know which 50%. That's gone with online because you can measure it, and with tools that we have been driving, and I'm sure the retail team here can provide you much more insights. Like, for example, the web efficiency panel. You can now really measure cross-media usage and how it drives people into your stores and to your online assets. So those 3 issues you probably need to face, and then there's one final recommendation, and that's probably it's logically for all of you here, but for your senior management, that's probably the biggest step. Online branding is bidirectional. So you need to be ready for an honest interaction with your consumers. And the one cornerstone you need to have for this is a perfect service, a perfect product. People will bitch about poor service online. There's no way around it. You cannot stop it. People used to bitch around poor services and poor products already offline. They said on their in German you call it Stammtisch, and talk to their friends and families and said that was poor service. These days they put it into their Twitter accounts. These days they put it onto Facebook. These days, and I probably think you all heard about that Continental Airlines, United Airlines video from that Canadian country singer whose guitar was broken on Chicago airport, and nobody reacted to his complaints on numerous attempts to interact with the company. Then he put a video online singing about how United broke his guitars, and within, I think, 48 hours, he had more than 2.5 million hits, had a report on, about that on CNN and NSBC. So people started noticing. So if your service is poor, if your product doesn't meet the requirements, people will complain about it online. And they probably will do so more intensely these days, as it's so easy to produce digital content, get it online, interact with others, have a huge Facebook network, and find stuff easily with Google. So the cornerstone of online branding is the readiness to really honestly interact with consumers in a way that probably hasn't been done before in the offline world, because it simply wasn't that necessary. And to close that off, and those of you who know me, I always tell stories about my family, and with this one, I have a very special one, because we have 2 little boys now, and when my wife started to buy diapers, like 2.5 years ago, she chose a private label brand because it was cheaper than the big brand. And it performed well. Tim was dry every night, and things went well until the private label brand decided to improve their product. And they went from a green filling of their diaper to a blue filling of the diaper, claiming that it has more, it even keeps the kid even drier than in the past. It didn't work with Tim. He woke up wet 2 mornings in a row, and my wife, who's a very enthusiastic complainer to companies, sent an email to that company indicating that Tim didn't sleep well and she has a hard time now. And that company wrote back immediately, perfect response time, thanking Nadia for her kind letter, indicating that they put a lot of effort into research and development, and that they really take their complaint serious. But it's unfortunately the first time that they got any complaint about it, and it's probably not the diaper, but it might be Tim. At the same time, Nadia went online at one of those peculiar websites called mummy.net, and while the company was claiming that was the first complaint, more than 50 mothers discussed the negative impact of the changing color in the diapers, and since that day we are buying Pampers again. So people are complaining. You need to have the readiness of senior management to interact with your brand in a different way than you had to have it offline. So that's what I wanted to say to start the discussion. I don't know what time it is exactly.
We have 4 minutes.
4 minutes. So if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. The Rahman, very disappointing.
Excuse myself, my voice is not 100% there, but I have a question. I fully understand that you're saying people are reacting live, they're reacting really instantaneously. So if something is wrong with the product, the companies will feel it immediately. But does this effect also work both ways? That means will the consumer also forget quicker than before? Because if he improves, or if the product or whatever the complaint is being taken care of, does the company or the product also has a chance to recover more quickly than before the age of the web?
A good example for that is mystarbucksidea.com. Starbucks suffered from bad customer experience in the US like 2 years ago. They were considered not innovative, not close to the customer, introduced too many breakfast products that made the whole Starbucks smell of fried eggs and stuff. And they set up that website, mystarbucksidea.com, and I think in the first couple of months received more than 56,000 improvement ideas. and it seemed to have worked for them. I think you can't kind of answer that in black and white, but Starbucks is an example, Dell is an example of companies that, from my perspective, reacted in the right way. So at least it seems that there is a fair chance.
One more question, maybe?
Just a specific question on Google and how you see the world of branding. There are a lot of, core business, Google is search. There are a lot of tools to track the results of search and measure the effectiveness. How important is for you the display business and then content network and really tracking what's the user behavior and how to influence, remessaging, retargeting, behavioral targeting, the users across the content network, exposure to the brand, and then the interaction to the brand, and then outside in the bloggers, YouTube, the engagement, but then the users have to the brand. How do you see the future? Is it still search, and a bit of the rest, or will be a lot of branding and support for branding and also a bit of search?
I think that search is definitely not done yet. So there are many innovations coming in search, and we do see a brand effect of search. On the other hand, and I can fully underscore what you said, the Google Content Network and our YouTube product are important for us, and they are bringing value to brand advertisers, because we are kind of bringing the science of search into the display business. Remarketing, as you said, is a great example of how we can use technology to make that ad more relevant and more effective. And although, and that's no secret as well, there are a couple of significant privacy hurdles to overcome. I think that better targeting technology and the ability to unobtrusively follow a customer in the web will make a big difference in marketing over the next couple of years. So bringing the science of what we've learned in search to the display business is definitely one of our big strategic drives. And mobile, to a certain extent, makes that easier because people understand the fact that they are recognizable with mobile. In mobile, it also seems that the barrier to reveal information isn't that big, as long as a certain a certain level of trust is maintained. So the mobile display business, the mobile search business, the mobile apps business, as you know, we've acquired AppMob quite recently, is definitely a big driver on how to leverage what we've learned in search into the display business and into the brand business.
That's an excellent question to end on, because some of those themes we're picking up in the next couple of sessions, so that's a perfect point. Bang on time. Stefan, thank you ever so much.
Thank you very much.